Mrs. Hendricks? I turned towards the unexpected voice interrupting our family dinner to see a sharply dressed man at the doorway. I'm Kenneth Briggs, a private investigator. He stepped inside, ignoring Derek's questioning look. I have some sensitive information regarding your husband. My heart raced as Briggs withdrew a manila envelope. Mrs. Hendricks, I regret to inform you that your husband has been involved in an affair for the past 8 months. The room fell silent as Derek's fork clattered onto his plate. I felt the blood drain from my face as Briggs removed a sheaf of photographs, each one a nauseating gut punch. There was Derek, locked in intimate embraces with a slender brunette whose face I instantly recognized, my estranged younger sister, Elise. You lying, cheating bastard! I erupted, shattering the stillness. Bile rose in my throat as I hurled the photos across the table, uncaring that our teenage daughters flinched at the venom in my voice. Derek's complexion turned ashen. Marla, I can explain. Like hell you can. I cut him off with a sweep of my hand, chest heaving with anger and betrayal. How could you do this to me, to our family? I gestured at our girls, faces contorted with shock and confusion. Mrs. Hendricks, Briggs spoke evenly, I have documented evidence of your husband systematically draining finances and diverting assets to fund his indiscretions with your sister over the past several months. The despair sliced through me, sharp as a knife. I had suspected Derek's distance, the constant business trips and late nights, but Elise? My own flesh and blood? My temple throbbed as waves of rage threatened to drown me. I'm leaving for Shanghai tonight on an urgent business trip, Derek abruptly announced, rising from his chair. Defiance flashed across his taut features. When I return, we'll discuss this rationally like adults. Don't bother coming back, I shouted after his retreating figure. I whirled towards Elise's damning photos, still strewn across the tablescape amidst our half-eaten dinner. My life as I knew it lay in ruins, but I would not surrender so easily. Mustering every ounce of composure, I turned to face my bewildered daughters. This changes nothing for you two, I stated, my voice fortified with a conviction I didn't quite feel. Your father and I stumbled over the words, tasting ashes on my tongue. We're going through a difficult time, but I promise you we'll get through this. Their frightened expressions twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I watched numbly as they fled the maelstrom of shattered trust and heartbreak, now consuming the home I'd thought was unshakable. Briggs remained an uncomfortable witness. My services have been paid in full to provide you with all available documentation, he remarked, sliding the envelope towards me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hendricks. No wife deserves this. An icy calm insulated me as I accepted the file. Don't be sorry, Mr. Briggs. My voice hardened with grim resolution. Be ready, because I'm just getting started. The hours blurred together after Derek's abrupt departure. I paced the hallways of our home, a gilded cage now tainted by his deception. Framed photos mocked me at every turn, snapshots of happier times twisted into bitter lies. I sank onto the bed we once shared, cradling my throbbing head. How could the man I loved, the father of my children, betray me so callously? And with Elise, of all people, my own sister? Trembling fingers traced the sharp lines of Derek's deceit, immortalized in Briggs' damning photos. An animalistic rage seethed within me, screaming for vengeance. I envisioned hurling plates, diamonds, bricks, anything to shatter the man who had shattered my world, without a shred of remorse. But I couldn't lash out recklessly, not with custody of the girls at stake. I had to remain level-headed, strategic. Derek's smug assertion that we'd discuss this rationally still rankled, as if he could whitewash his transgressions with empty platitudes. No, I needed a plan, a way to strike back and regain control, to ensure he and Elise faced the consequences they deserved. The echo of the front door slamming ricocheted through the stillness, jarring me from my stupor. I tensed, but familiar footsteps ascended the staircase. Hey! Theo's concerned face appeared in the doorway. Of course, he had rushed over after hearing the news. My dear friend and the best divorce attorney in the state. Wordlessly, I handed him the file, watching his expression contort with disbelief and anger as he examined the indisputable proof. That lying sack of shit, he growled at last, raking calloused fingers through his graying hair. Don't mince words, Theo, I replied with a hollow laugh. Just tell me honestly, what are my options? His jaw tightened grimly. We build an ironclad case. Hit him where it hurts, his money, his assets, his reputation. With evidence like this, he waved the folder in emphasis, we bury the bastard. A vindictive thrill coursed through me at the thought of skinning Derek for every last penny, to leave him destitute and disgraced as penance for his crimes. Good, I stated, steeling my voice, because I want it all. Every sordid detail, every illicit transfer of marital assets exposed, he doesn't get to slink away unscathed. Theo's expression shifted to one of cautious concern. Marla, think this through. Once we expose him, there's no going back. Your marriage, your lives together. It'll all be destroyed, played out in open court for everyone to dissect. Can you live with that? I felt my expression harden into a rictus carved from ice. Theo, he destroyed my life the moment he betrayed me with my own sister, I replied with frigid clarity. Now I'm going to destroy his. Those final words unleashed a twisted sense of dark satisfaction. For too long I had been the victim, the deceived wife, the embarrassed sister, the fool, but no longer. If Derek and Elise wanted the gloves off, I would oblige them. Starting today, I was going on the attack. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of grim determination. On Theo's advice, I began methodically collecting evidence to solidify my case against Derek and Elise. When the private investigator's report confirmed my worst fears that Derek had been systemically siphoning money and assets to fund his tawdry affair, a cold fury insulated me. I felt icy detachment transcend the devastating anguish of his betrayal. First, I discreetly transferred the contents of our joint accounts to a new one under my name alone, ensuring Derek would be unable to drain our finances further. The numbers swam before my eyes, each pilfered figure another twist of the knife in my gut. Next came compiling the paperwork. Copies of bank statements, unexplained expenditures, mortgage transfers, all blatantly suspicious. Theo assured me we had more than enough to decimate Derek's falsely cultivated facade of martial bliss and business success. We also need to figure out your living situation, he advised during one late-night strategy session, the shadows accentuating his frown lines. If you stay in the house, it just gives Derek's lawyers more ammunition to claim you condoned his actions. I worried my bottom lip, reluctant to uproot our daughters' lives any more than necessary. But Theo made a fair point. Any delay could jeopardize my custody claim. Surprising even myself, I found the answer immediately. My friend Lena? She has that big place in Hudson after her divorce. Theo's eyebrows arched in approval. The financial advisor who hates cheaters? Perfect. She'll make an amazing ally and witness. Sure enough, one phone call was all it took for Lena to open her doors without question. What day do you need me, hon? Her smoky voice crackled over the line, full of the vinegar and vulnerability that characterized survivors like us. Within 36 hours, I had packed up what little I could carry of our old life and ushered the girls into Lena's guest rooms. To their shell-shocked whispers about this only being temporary, I forced a reassuring smile that was only partially a lie. Chin up, ladies, Lena commanded, wrapping us in her signature embrace, rich curls cascading around her warm features. We've got your backs. Count on that. As we hunkered in the cocoon of Lena's hospitality, I felt the first flickers of hope reigniting inside me, that Derek and Elise's transgressions wouldn't go unavenged, and that a path forward still remained. Then the phone rang, shattering the moment's fragile complacency. Derek's number flashed across the screen, and an icy chill gripped me. The first volley was about to be fired. I stared at Derek's number flashing insistently on the screen. A twisted part of me longed to answer, to confront him with the full depth of his betrayal. But I knew better than to show my hand prematurely. Lena, I called out, can you join me? Within moments, her concerned features appeared in the hallway. Is everything okay? Wordlessly, I tilted the phone towards her. Understanding flickered across her expression as Derek's number buzzed again. Want me to take this? I nodded gratefully. Lena was ex-military, unflappable and strategic, the perfect shield against Derek's manipulation. She accepted the call, angling the mouthpiece away. Derek, her tone was clipped but composed. Marla's indisposed at the moment. There was a muffled torrent from the other end. I saw Lena's jaw tighten imperceptibly. I'm sure she'll reach out when she's ready to discuss things rationally. Appointed Barb. For now, it's best you give her some space to process recent developments. Another eruption of protests. this one raising Lena's sculptured brows. I didn't realize rehashing sensitive family matters was appropriate workplace conversation, she rejoined coolly. But I'll pass along your thoughts to Marla. Goodbye, Derek. She disconnected the call with a succinct tab. Sorry about that, Han. I know that couldn't have been easy listening to his nonsense. A tremulous exhale escaped me. You're amazing, Lena, truly. She waved a dismissive hand. Please, that blowhard doesn't rattle me. Her warm eyes creased with concern. But you look like you're carrying the weight of the world right now. What else can I do? I felt a renewed surge of purpose. Actually, there is one thing. An hour later, we were closeted in Lena's luxurious home office, poring over the meticulously assembled dossier that would become the armament for my legal battle. Lena shook her head slowly as she absorbed the bank statements, check stubs, and appalling money trail. This is embezzlement, plain and simple. He bled you dry to keep that little harlot satisfied. My voice was toneless. The sad part? He thought I'd never find out, that I was too busy or too oblivious to ever piece it all together. Her sculpted features contorted with disgust. What a delusional, selfish prick. Well, the delusion ends now. I clicked over to the shared portfolio, watching the figures populate. These are all the holdings and assets Derek can legally access. Understanding flickered in Lena's obsidian eyes. And you want to lock him out? I nodded curtly. Every last dime gets retitled under my sole name, investments, real estate, liquid securities. He doesn't get to touch a penny of what's rightfully mine until the courts decide otherwise. Lena's dexterous fingers danced across the keyboard, initiating transfers and updated credentials. Consider it done. That money-grubbing liar is officially cut off. Her expression shifted as she decrypted another subfolder. Marla, what are these numbered accounts in the Caymans? I felt my cheeks flush as fragments of hushed conversation suddenly clicked into place. You're telling me that arrogant bastard was hoarding money offshore this entire time? She let out a slow whistle. And not just chump change, either. Her deft strokes isolated each account, each one more grossly embellished than the last. He could have been diligently saving for our future, our retirement. The bitterness was acid on my tongue. Instead, he pulled an economic 9/11 on us to secure his little hideaway nest with a lease. Lena's elfish features contorted with revulsion. Well, this is step too far. He can't just go burying assets and flaunting the law like that. I realize that now. My hands curled into fists as the magnitude of his duplicity hit me in waves. That duplicitous son of a bitch. Lena reached over and squeezed my arm, her touch steadying. Hey, we'll nail him for this, I swear. He's not getting away with pillaging your hard-earned nest egg. Jaw tightened with resolution. I held her gaze levelly. You're damn right, he won't. Not on my watch. The next few weeks became an intricate choreography of shielding myself from Derek's manipulations and shoring up my defenses. Thanks to Lena's Herculean efforts, all our major assets had been retroactively retitled under my singular ownership, staunching the financial hemorrhaging. Not that Derek didn't try to regain control. His calls and texts blew up my phone in increasingly erratic increments, peppering his demands with hollow protestations of innocence and misguided love. Marla, I know you're upset, but can't we talk this through like rational adults? I'm still your husband, and I demand. Towards the end, even the girls noticed, flinching at the shrill tones distorting from the speakers. I forestalled their concerned questions with reassuring smiles and stated that their father just needed some time. In reality, I had both dreaded and anticipated this escalation in Derek's behavior. So I followed Theo's counsel in documenting every irate voicemail, every unhinged text diatribe. More damning proof for the legal battleground that loomed ahead. To mute my inner turmoil, I receded inwards, letting a fortifying detachment insulate me. I no longer dwelled on the gutting anguish of his betrayal, nor the gaping void his calloused disregard had eviscerated. Instead, I simply existed. Day to day, checking the obligatory boxes with the armor of detachment, deflecting the numbing currents of fury, regret, and occasional pity that taunted me. Theo assured me this emotional icebox was normal, even advisable. Feeling is the enemy right now, Marla. It'll just cloud your judgment and give Derek's shysters an opening. Nevertheless, the customary rituals of my old life still haunted me like ghostly sentinels, mocking the hollowness of my existence. I found myself jolting awake in panic at 3 a.m., bitter at the loss of the partner who had once slumbered beside me, reassuring and sheltering. Who had that man been? The one I committed 20-something years to? Or had he died long ago, subsumed by the sociopsychic monster who now reviled me? Desperate for an outlet, I immersed myself in maintaining the vestiges of normalcy for the girls, ensuring their schedules and activities persisted with minimal disruption. Blessing Lena's hospitality for providing a cocoon of security, however fleeting it might prove. Still, their troubled frowns whenever Derek's name arose spoke volumes. How much longer could I reasonably postpone revealing the truth? That the father figure they had idolized was well on his way to becoming a pariah? That our family nucleus was splintering beyond repair? They were sharp, precocious young ladies. They would eventually discern that the ensuing divorce was no amicable separation. I found myself craving other distractions, any diversion to divert my mind from its ceaseless spools of recrimination and dismay. With Lena's encouragement, I gingerly resumed my passion projects like painting and weaving, channeling my pent-up tempests into intricate line work and fractal textures. I joined her twice-weekly boxing sessions at an exclusive boutique gym, relishing the euphoric simplicity of repeatedly pummeling the heavy bag in controlled bursts of exertion. My therapist, Dr. Ramirez, applauded these efforts towards self-reclamation during our bi-weekly visits. A serene, maternal presence, she nonetheless stressed the necessity of working through the grieving process. "You're building impressive fortifications, Marla, but you can't wall off the pain indefinitely. It will find cracks, erode your defenses. Let yourself experience the waves of hurt, then release them with intentional healing. It's the only way to fully excise the toxins he inflicted." Even the good doctor's empathetic counsel sparked flickering prickles of resentment. Hadn't I endured enough psychological carnage already? Why should I purposefully immiserate myself by treading through the minefield of what was and what could have been? 10 agonizing days after his abrupt departure, Derek finally returned from his supposed business trip. I braced myself, squaring my shoulders as Theo and I waited in Lena's vestibule. The familiar crunch of tires on gravel heralded his arrival. I gripped the thick dossier tighter, its damning contents fortifying my resolve. The front door burst open and Derek blustered inside, withering slightly at the sight of Theo. "Why am I not surprised you're here?" he sneered. "This is the part where you start listening for once in your miserable life," Theo stated flatly. Derek opened his mouth, no doubt to spew more indignant dismissals, but I cut him off. No more lies. My voice was glacial. No more deceptions, delusions, or pitiful attempts to gaslight me. With surgical precision, I unfurled the gallery of photos, spreadsheets, and documentation across the sofa. Derek's complexion ashen as the incriminating evidence of his malfeasance proliferated. "Not only have you been serially unfaithful," I heard my tone acquire a razor's edge, "but you've been slowly looting our accounts, pillaging our assets to fund your sad little tryst with my sister." His Adam's apple bobbed rapidly as panic crept into his expression. "Marla, I can explain ever. Save your rationalizations. They're meaningless at this point." I shoved aside his grasping hands, the paper seeming to sear his fingertips. "Your signature is on every bank draft, every wire transfer, every unauthorized disbursement of funds, plain as day." Derek's facade finally cracked, ugliness twisting his features. "So that's it, then? A few indiscretions, and you're burning everything to the ground? Our marriage, my career, our family legacy?" "Your indiscretions have already detonated our family," I exploded, infusing every ounce of scorn and disgust into the words. "I don't recognize the pathetic bastard standing before me anymore." "You self-righteous bitch," he erupted with a sudden primal fury that made Theo tense instinctively. "You think you can publicly flog me like some criminal without consequences?" My answering smile was as frigid as Antarctic ice. "I relish those consequences, Derek, because in the end, you'll be broke, alone, and utterly disgraced. A shunned, soiled nothing, while I walk away from the ashes." Chin jutting in a final petulant display of contempt, he turned on his heel and stormed out. But even his exaggerated bluster couldn't disguise the dawning horror on his face. He knew he was cornered, outmaneuvered. Checkmate. That night, even my dreams offered no sanctuary. I found myself crying hot, angry tears, not from sorrow, but from a place of visceral rage that this utter waste of a man had dared to betray me so profoundly, to squander every ounce of goodwill, trust, and commitment I'd so foolishly vested in him. But the tears were also cathartic, lancing years of pent-up disillusionment and deception. As the howling echoes of Derek's classically juvenile tantrums faded, a steely resolve cemented within me. No more would I be the victim, the pretty little ornament masking the rot festering beneath. From this point forward, I would be the vengeful architect of his self-destruction, and every psychological dagger, every precisely calibrated legal maneuver would serve as the instruments of that exquisite retribution. I would burn it all down and salt the earth, just like he deserved. In the days following Derek's meltdown, I wasted no time capitalizing on the initiative. Utilizing my collated evidence, I filed for an at-fault divorce on grounds of adultery, abandonment, and the unauthorized dissipation of marital assets. While part of me recoiled at the prospect of airing our imploded marriage's dirty laundry in open court, another part recognized the strategic value. By striking first with an overwhelming offense, I seized control of the narrative while blindsiding Derek. "He'll be scrambling to build a defense on multiple fronts," Theo assured me, typically unflappable demeanor, betraying a hint of dark satisfaction. "Let's see him lawyer up to counter all these interlocking claims." True to form, Derek soon found himself engulfed under an avalanche of damaging disclosures. The paternity allegations alone were enough to decimate what remained of his professional reputation. Coupled with the fraud in asset disclosures, they cemented his status as a radioactive pariah. By leveraging my carefully assembled documentation and testimony, my legal team constructed an inescapable cage of consequences. Surveillance evidence placed him at hotels and rendezvous spots, often withdrawing substantial cash amounts just beforehand. Banking records revealed his establishment of slush fund accounts and wire transfers to international holding locations. Even more damaging were the third-party testimonies of Elise's indiscriminate confessions to family members, of Derek's increasingly callous behavior towards me and the girls, and the contradictory paper trails he left behind while cavorting with his mistress. Within weeks, the court of public opinion had sentenced Derek as guilty. Long before our divorce could be formalized or the civil trials concluded, the man was an utter professional and personal pariah. "You did this," he raged during one ill-advised confrontation. "My colleagues won't even speak to me anymore." I merely shrugged. "I'm simply disclosing facts and letting people draw their own conclusions, Derek. If they're judging you harshly, perhaps that's indicative of your actions." The expression contorting his face oscillated between apoplectic rage and sheer panic. It was abundantly clear he had never contemplated the full-scale, mutually assured destruction I was orchestrating. That his ego had blinded him to the very real prospect of a life in ashes. Watching his mounting desperation furnished a deeply vindicating gratification. My emotional resurrection seemed to flourish in inverse proportion to his self-inflicted ruination. I found myself giving media interviews with selective, surgically precise responses. Posed photos were our art directed to present me as the quintessential wounded but resilient heroine, steadfastly soldiering forward for her innocent children. Conversely, every interaction and court appearance saw Derek further unraveling into an erratic, sullen caricature of the urbane success he once feigned. It became undeniable that his simmering, thwarted indignation constituted the final death rattle of ego before total annihilation. For any residual pity I might have felt for the man rapidly dissipated. In its place blossomed an almost rapturous sense of karmic inevitability. This was always his destiny, to be outwitted and outmaneuvered by the woman he so casually discarded in pursuit of instant gratification. Not that I would brandish the bloody coup as some Amazon's war prize, but by maintaining an outward veneer of gracious composure, I let the debris of Derek's immolation serve as its own cautionary testament. Fool me once, shame on you, but to self-destruct so thoroughly despite every opportunity for redemption? Well, that unmitigated failure of character was his alone, inscribed across the ashes of his legacy. Despite the protracted legal battles, the divorce itself was a mere formality at this point. Derek's derelictions were so overwhelming, so undeniably malicious, that the proceedings proved utterly one-sided. The court awards sole custody to Mrs. Hendricks in addition to a substantial majority of liquid assets and properties, the judge stated in clipped, dispassionate tones. Mr. Hendricks' conduct represents a complete abrogation of his familial duties and marital vows. Across the aisle, Derek slumped in his seat, a pathetic, broken husk animating what remained of his publicly immolated reputation. Gone were the immaculate suits and assured airs. He sat there, hollowed and ashen in discarded clothes, reeking of whiskey and sleepless nights. His eyes remained downcast, unable to meet my unflinching gaze. As the gavel declared the marriage officially dissolved, I felt an unfamiliar pang reverberate through me. Not sorrow or regret, those indulgences were distant memories. No, this was the exhilarating release of a burden, shackles tough to the soul being struck off with a stark finality. Theo clasped my shoulder, his calloused grip anchoring me back to the moment. "It's done," he murmured with a barely perceptible nod. "He got everything he deserved." My smile was equally understated yet serene. No, he got far less than that. In the hellish months that followed, Derek's descent charted a tragicomic freefall. Once an upwardly mobile banking executive, his professional pedigree mutated into permanent radioactive toxicity. Every job opportunity disintegrated as cagey references shared the cautionary chronicle of his philandering, misogyny, and white-collar embezzlement. Even his closest business associates distanced themselves, justifiably wary of being tainted by association with such a comprehensive implosion. From that inferno emerged my total legal and moral vindication. But more importantly, it heralded an emancipation from the shattered dreams and profound delusions that had anchored me to that wretched man for so long. The assets I had wrenched from Derek's grasp furnished me a revitalizing new lease on life. Within 6 months, I had liquidated our marital residence and invested in a sleek, elevated townhome in a more vibrant, re-energized area of the city, closer to the girls' schools and extracurriculars. No longer shrouded in spatial mementos of trauma and despair, I found myself blossoming back into my truest self. Career opportunities that had stagnated during my marriage rekindled with fresh fire. Artist collectives and nonprofits welcomed my talents with open arms. Even the girls seemed to thrive in this regenerative environment. The pinched, haunted wariness that had clouded their expressions steadily lifted. Recitals, matches, and events no longer triggered bristled silences, where Derek's absence loomed like an unexploded mortar. We were free. Wandering the farmers' markets and cultural festivals that epitomized our new neighborhood's beating heart, I could almost physically feel their tension eroding beneath the purifying sunshine of autonomy. Almost cruelly, I ensured Elise received no such comforts. My lawsuits alleging her complicity in the depletion of marital assets continued unabated. Just as the courts had scoured Derek of every ill-gotten gain, so too would she face devastating financial repercussions. Petty recompense, some might argue. But such was the emotional ruinscape she had indulged in seeding that I felt no mercy. In fact, I made it a point to routinely update her on her dwindling legal circumstances, now that pride and perjury charges were being considered. Let her endure even a fraction of the torment she helped inflict, watching her greed and wanton selfishness facilitate her own undoing. Some called it overkill. I called it karma, finally delivered. The only pity I retained was for my former self, the myopic, naively devoted woman who had anchored her identity to a depraved lie and a despicable con man. The hard-learned lessons had flayed that identity until only truth remained. Perhaps that was the true path to healing, embracing these harsh revelations as brusque awakenings rather than debilitating traumas, to finally see the withered, desiccated remnants exposed, while turning my gaze to the vibrant sunlight and new horizons untainted by past poisons. Staring clear-eyed into the expanse of second chances, I found myself eager to begin anew. The warm summer breeze carried the tantalizing aromas of freshly grilled meats and sizzling street food as I strolled through the bustling gourmet festival. My heart swelled with pride, knowing that my passion for promoting healthy eating habits had helped make this event a reality. Little did I know that this joyous occasion would soon take an unexpected turn, casting a dark shadow over the memories of my past. As I admired the vibrant array of local vendors showcasing their culinary creations, a familiar voice pierced through the lively chatter, sending a chill down my spine. "Well, if it isn't Lila, fancy meeting you here." I whirled around, my breath caught in my throat as I came face to face with Mark, my ex-husband, accompanied by his new wife, Elise. A sudden wave of emotions washed over me. A potent mix of anger, resentment, and an undeniable twinge of envy at the sight of their polished appearances and the air of affluence that surrounded them. "Mark, Elise," I managed to utter, mustering a forced smile. "It's been a while." "Indeed, it has," Elise chimed in, her perfectly manicured nails glistening in the sunlight. "It's so nice to see you managing to keep yourself busy with, well, whatever it is you do these days." Her thinly veiled condescension stung, but I refused to let her words diminish the sense of accomplishment I'd worked so hard to cultivate. Before I could respond, Mark intervened, his tone dripping with false concern. "Lila, you're looking well. I trust your little nutrition business is keeping you occupied?" I bristled at his dismissive remark, but years of emotional turmoil had taught me to keep my composure. "It's more than just a little business, Mark. My work has a real impact on people's lives. Something you never seem to grasp." An uncomfortable silence descended upon us, the festive ambience suddenly muted by the weight of our shared history. Mark's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and I could sense the tension brewing beneath his carefully crafted facade. "Well, we mustn't keep you any longer," Elise interjected, her saccharine smile masking a deeper disdain. "I'm sure you have clients to attend to." With a curt nod, they turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to grapple with the conflicting emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. As I stood there, surrounded by the joyous laughter and the mouth-watering scents that had once brought me such delight, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss, not for the man I had once loved, but for the naive, trusting woman I had been. As I walked away from the festival, my mind spiraled back to the fateful night that shattered my world. Mark's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, his face etched with guilt. "There's been an emergency at the hospital," he muttered, already halfway out the door before I could respond. This wasn't the first time he had been called away unexpectedly, and I had learned to accept the demands of his profession. But something felt different that night. A nagging sense of unease that I couldn't quite shake. Hours ticked by, and Mark's absence stretched longer than usual. Concern gave way to suspicion as I paced restlessly, unable to silence the doubts gnawing at the back of my mind. Finally, exhausted and desperate for answers, I decided to venture out and uncover the truth myself. The drive to the hospital was a blur, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel with a mixture of determination and dread. But as I approached the familiar entrance, a sinking feeling consumed me. Mark's car was nowhere to be found. Panic set in, and I found myself wandering aimlessly, searching for any clue that might explain his disappearance. That's when I saw it. A sleek silver sedan parked in a secluded corner of the lot, its tinted windows offering no insight into its occupants. Summoning every ounce of courage, I crept closer, my heart pounding in my ears, and then a sound that would haunt me for years to come, laughter, followed by the unmistakable rustle of clothing and the muffled murmurs of intimacy. The world around me seemed to freeze as realization dawned, shattering the illusion of the life I thought I knew. Paralyzed by shock and disbelief, I stumbled away from the scene, my vision blurred by a torrent of tears. Weeks turned into months, and Mark's lies only compounded, each explanation more flimsy than the last. And yet, I clung to the fading hope that the man I loved still existed beneath the web of deceit. But fate had other plans. One fateful evening, as I was sorting through the mail, an innocuous envelope caught my eye. Inside, a series of incriminating photographs, proof of Mark's infidelity, captured in excruciatingly vivid detail. And there she was, the woman I would come to know as Elise, her smug grin searing itself into my memory like a brand. The confrontation that followed was explosive, a maelstrom of accusations and denials that culminated in a bitter separation. Mark, ever the smooth operator, wasted no time parading his new trophy wife before the world, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of my life. As I stood amidst the bustling festival, the memories of that harrowing time came flooding back, each carefully constructed lie Mark had fed me, replaying in my mind like a twisted mantra. But this time, I refused to be the victim. This time, I would have my revenge. In the aftermath of my divorce, I found solace in the one thing that had always brought me joy, my work. Pouring my energy into building a thriving nutrition consulting business, I slowly began to heal the deep wounds left by Mark's betrayal. It was during this time of personal growth that I met Owen, a kind-hearted widower and elementary school teacher. Our paths crossed at a local health fair, where his genuine interest in my work and gentle demeanor immediately put me at ease. "I admire your passion for helping others," he remarked as we chatted over steaming cups of herbal tea. "It's so refreshing to encounter someone who truly cares about making a positive impact." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I found myself laughing without the weight of past trauma holding me back. Owen's warm smile and genuine concern for my well-being were like a soothing balm on the scars left by Mark's deceit. As our friendship blossomed into something more, I couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between these two men. Where Mark had been consumed by ambition and a relentless pursuit of success, Owen embodied humility and a deep appreciation for the simple joys in life. "You know, Leela," he mused one evening as we strolled hand in hand through the park, "true wealth isn't measured by material possessions or status. It's found in the connections we forge, the lives we touch, and the legacy we leave behind." His words resonated deeply within me, a testament to the profound shift in my priorities and values. No longer was I captivated by the allure of wealth and prestige. Instead, I found myself drawn to Owen's unwavering integrity and his genuine concern for the well-being of those around him. With each passing day, the specter of my past faded, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and a determination to embrace the second chance life had offered me. "You've been through so much," Owen remarked one night, his fingers gently caressing my cheek. "But your resilience and strength are an inspiration. I'm honored to be a part of your journey." As I gazed into his eyes, brimming with sincerity and understanding, I knew that this man represented everything I had been searching for. A partner who valued honesty, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of trust. In that moment, I vowed to leave the ghosts of my past behind, to embrace the future with open arms, and to never again allow myself to be defined by the mistakes of others. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly free. Months after my chance encounter with Mark and Elise at the food festival, I found myself attending a charity gala hosted by our city's most prominent organizations. As I adjusted the sleek, navy blue dress Owen had surprised me with, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervous anticipation. "You're going to be amazing tonight," Owen whispered, placing a reassuring kiss on my cheek as we made our way into the elegantly decorated ballroom. Little did I know that this evening would mark a turning point, a pivotal moment where the karmic scales would begin to shift in my favor. As the event unfolded, I mingled with colleagues and community leaders, sharing insights into the work I was so passionate about. Owen beamed with pride, never missing an opportunity to sing my praises to anyone within earshot. It was during one such conversation that I caught a glimpse of Mark and Elise entering the room, their designer outfits and air of self-importance impossible to miss. A familiar pang of resentment tugged at my heart, but before I could dwell on it, Owen swept me into his arms. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" he announced, his voice ringing out with confidence. "I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone truly special." As the room fell silent, Owen turned to me, his eyes shining with adoration. "Lila, your unwavering dedication to improving the lives of others through your work has been an inspiration to us all. Tonight, we celebrate you and the countless lives you've touched." A thunderous applause erupted as Owen presented me with a beautiful crystal plaque inscribed with words of gratitude from the community. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth and admiration of my peers, I felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Mark and Elise, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and barely concealed disdain. It was as if the universe had conspired to shine a spotlight on my accomplishments, forcing them to confront the glaring contrast between my life and theirs. As the evening drew to a close, I couldn't help but savor the sweet taste of vindication. Owen had orchestrated the perfect scenario, subtly but effectively showcasing the depth of my impact while highlighting the shallowness of Mark and Elise's perceived superiority. On the drive home, I found myself reflecting on the twists and turns that had led me to this point. Once a victim of betrayal and emotional turmoil, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and surrounded by those who truly valued me for who I was. And as for Mark and Elise, their presence at the gala had served as a stark reminder of the emptiness that lurked beneath their carefully curated facade, a hollow existence built on lies and superficial trappings. For the first time, I felt a sense of pity for them, realizing that no amount of wealth or status could compensate for the absence of genuine fulfillment and meaningful connections. As Owen's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining in a tender embrace, I knew that the path ahead would be one of triumph and personal growth, leaving the shadows of my past firmly in the rearview mirror. The charity gala had barely concluded when I found myself face to face with Mark and Elise once again. As Owen excused himself to grab us some refreshments, the tension in the air was palpable. Well, if it isn't the guest of honor," Elise sneered, her perfectly painted lips curling into a condescending smirk. "I must say that little display earlier was quite impressive." Mark remained silent, his eyes narrowed as he regarded me with a mix of disdain and something else, a flicker of envy, perhaps. I steeled myself, determined not to let their petty jabs pierce my newfound confidence. "Elise, always a pleasure," I replied, my tone laced with sarcasm. "I'm glad you enjoyed the evening. It's all in service of a good cause, after all." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she searched for a weakness to exploit. "Yes, well, we all have our hobbies, don't we?" she quipped. "Some choose to make a real difference, while others settle for playing nutritionist to the masses." The barb stung, but before I could respond, Owen reappeared by my side, his presence serving as a steadying force. "Mark, Elise," he greeted them warmly, his arm snaking around my waist in a protective embrace. "I hope you've been enjoying yourselves. Lila's work is truly inspiring, isn't it?" Elise opened her mouth to retort, but Owen cut her off with a disarming smile. "In fact, I've been considering getting more involved myself. Perhaps you could enlighten me on the inner workings of your business ventures, Mark." The shift in tone was subtle, but unmistakable. Owen's words carried an undercurrent of veiled accusation, as if he possessed knowledge that extended far beyond the superficial realm of Mark's supposed success. Mark visibly tensed, his eyes darting between Owen and me, searching for any sign of weakness or vulnerability. But he found none, for in that moment I felt an overwhelming sense of empowerment, bolstered by Owen's unwavering support. "Yes, Mark, do tell us about your endeavors," I echoed, my voice steady and assured. "I'm sure we'd all love to hear about the sacrifices you've made to achieve your aspirations." The air grew thick with tension, charged with unspoken truths and barely concealed barbs. Elise's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in power dynamics, while Mark's carefully constructed facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of the insecurity and guilt that festered beneath. In that moment, I knew that the tide had turned. No longer was I the one cowering in the shadows, haunted by the echoes of betrayal. Instead, I stood tall, emboldened by the knowledge that karma was slowly but surely exacting its due. As Mark and Elise beat a hasty retreat, their excuses falling flat, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction course through my veins. This was merely the beginning, a premonition of the reckoning that awaited them, a harbinger of the retribution they so richly deserved. Owen's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a silent gesture of solidarity. "You're incredible, you know that?" he murmured, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. And in that moment, surrounded by the echoes of our hard-won victory, I knew that the path ahead would be one paved with redemption and the sweet taste of long-awaited justice. Weeks after the charity gala, I found myself standing alongside Mark at a prominent community health conference. As we awaited our turn to speak on the panel, the tension between us was thicker than the humid summer air. Owen, ever the supportive partner, sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride as he watched me prepare to take the stage. Little did Mark know, Owen had a few surprises up his sleeve, surprises that would soon unravel the carefully crafted facade that Mark had spent years constructing. As I took my seat behind the sleek podium, my confidence soared, fueled by the knowledge that Owen had orchestrated a powerful alliance with one of the event's major sponsors. The stage was set for Mark's downfall, and I could hardly contain my anticipation. Mark's speech was a masterclass in self-aggrandizement, filled with grandiose claims and thinly veiled boasts about his supposed contributions to the medical field. I watched with a mixture of amusement and disgust as he basked in the fleeting admiration of the audience, oblivious to the impending storm brewing on the horizon. When my turn came, I rose to the podium with a newfound confidence, my words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom and a steadfast commitment to truth. As I spoke of the transformative power of nutrition and the importance of community outreach, I could see Mark's expression shift, his bravado slowly giving way to a flicker of unease. But the true coup de grace came when Owen took the stage, his presence commanding an air of authority that caught even me by surprise. With a few well-chosen words, he revealed his connection to the event's major sponsor, a prestigious health initiative, and announced his intention to collaborate closely with my endeavors. The impact was immediate and palpable. Suddenly, my credibility and professional standing were elevated to new heights, casting a shadow over Mark's carefully cultivated image. And as if on cue, Elise's face contorted into a mask of barely concealed rage, her eyes burning with envy and resentment. It was in that moment of triumph that Elise made her fatal mistake. Rising from her seat, she attempted to undermine my speech with a barrage of snide remarks and thinly veiled insults. But her words fell flat, and instead of diminishing my accomplishments, she only succeeded in exposing her own deceitful nature to the entire audience. As whispers and gasps of disbelief rippled through the crowd, Elise's true colors were laid bare for all to see, a desperate, vindictive woman willing to stoop to any depths to maintain her illusion of superiority. And in that moment, the karmic scales tipped inexorably in my favor. Mark, paralyzed by the unfolding spectacle, could only watch in horror as his once powerful facade crumbled before his eyes. The audience that had once hung on his every word now regarded him with a mixture of pity and disdain, their respect eroded by the harsh light of truth. As the conference drew to a close, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers and newfound allies, each one eager to congratulate me on my triumph and distance themselves from the toxicity that had enveloped Mark and Elise. And in the midst of it all, Owen stood by my side, his arm draped around my shoulders, in a silent declaration of solidarity and unwavering support. "You did it," he murmured, his eyes shining with pride. "You exposed them for who they truly are." And in that moment, I knew that the path to redemption had been paved, the karmic scales finally balancing in my favor after years of suffering and betrayal. The aftermath of the community conference was a whirlwind of congratulations and newfound alliances, but the true reckoning was yet to come. As Owen and I made our way to the after-party, arm in arm, I could sense the palpable tension in the air. Mark and Elise were already there, huddled in a corner with a few of their remaining allies, their expressions a mixture of barely concealed rage and desperation. As our eyes met, Elise's lips curled into a snarl, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the stem of her wineglass. But before she could launch into another tirade of insults and accusations, a voice rang out from across the room, cutting through the din like a knife. "Mark, is it true?" The question came from a mild-mannered colleague of Mark's, a man whose quiet demeanor had always made him fade into the background. But tonight, his eyes burned with a newfound intensity, fueled by the revelations that had unfolded during the conference. Mark's face paled as he turned to face the man, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Is it true that you've been falsifying patient records?" the man pressed, his voice steadily rising. "That you've been prioritizing your own financial gain over the well-being of those you've sworn to protect?" A hush fell over the room as the weight of the accusation sank in. Suddenly, the whispers and rumors that had swirled around Mark's unethical practices crystallized into a damning reality, laid bare for all to see. Elise's perfectly composed mask began to crack, her eyes darting frantically between Mark and the growing crowd of onlookers. But it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and a torrent of long-repressed truths came surging forth. One by one, colleagues and former associates stepped forward, their voices rising in a chorus of condemnation. Stories of Mark's lies, his manipulations, and his callous disregard for the well-being of others echoed through the room, each revelation more damning than the last. And at the center of it all stood Owen, his quiet presence a beacon of integrity amidst the chaos. With a few carefully chosen words, he connected the dots between Mark's professional misdeeds and his personal betrayals, painting a vivid picture of a man consumed by greed and ambition. As the night wore on, the walls seemed to close in around Mark and Elise, their once formidable empire crumbling under the weight of their own deceit. Colleagues who had once fawned over them now turned their backs, their admiration replaced by scorn and disgust. And through it all, I stood tall, my hand clasped firmly in Owen's, a silent witness to the poetic justice unfolding before my eyes. For years, I had been the victim, cowering in the shadows of Mark's lies and Elise's cruelty. But now the tables had turned, and I basked in the sweet taste of long-awaited retribution. As the night drew to a close and the last of Mark's supporters slunk away in defeat, I found myself surrounded by a sea of friendly faces, colleagues, community leaders, and newfound allies who had witnessed my triumph and rallied to my side. And in the midst of it all, Owen pulled me close, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You stood your ground, and the truth prevailed." In that moment I knew that the path to redemption had been forged, paved with the remnants of Mark and Elise's shattered facade. The scales of karma had finally balanced, and a new chapter of my life was just beginning. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the intimate confines of the cozy restaurant, casting warm hues over the faces of the small gathering. Owen's hand found mine beneath the tablecloth, his fingers intertwining with my own as I surveyed the smiling faces of those who had stood by me through the tumultuous journey. As glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, I couldn't help but reflect on the winding path that had led me here. A path paved with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately redemption. "A toast," Owen announced, rising to his feet and raising his glass, "to new beginnings and the strength to overcome adversity." A chorus of cheers erupted, echoing through the dimly lit space as we celebrated not just my personal triumph, but the resilience of the human spirit itself. In the aftermath of the conference, the dominoes of Mark and Elise's downfall had continued to fall, one after another. Professional censures, legal battles, and a steadily dwindling circle of allies had left them isolated and disgraced, their once formidable reputations in tatters. But tonight wasn't about them. It was about embracing the future and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. As the evening wore on, conversations ebbed and flowed, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the clinking of silverware against plates. And through it all, Owen remained by my side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength and inspiration. It was during a lull in the conversation that he gently cleared his throat, his eyes shining with a mixture of love and determination. "Leela," he began, his voice steady and assured, "from the moment we met, you've been an inspiration, a beacon of resilience and unwavering commitment to what truly matters in life." A hush fell over the table as he reached into his pocket, producing a small, velvet box. My breath caught in my throat as he lowered himself to one knee, the flickering candlelight dancing across his face. "You've shown me the true meaning of courage and perseverance, and I can't imagine walking this journey without you by my side. Lila, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The room seemed to fade away as I gazed into Owen's eyes, our shared history and the promise of a future together crystallizing in that single, pivotal moment. Tears of joy streaked down my cheeks as I nodded, rendered speechless by the depth of emotion swirling within me. A thunderous applause erupted, our friends and allies rising to their feet in a chorus of celebration. As Owen slipped the ring onto my finger, a symbolic gesture of our commitment, I knew that this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the radiant promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unwavering bond we shared. In that moment, I realized that the long, arduous journey had been worth it. Every heartache, every betrayal, every tear shed had led me to this point, this moment of profound joy and redemption. As I gazed around the table at the faces of those who had become my chosen family, I knew that the path ahead would be one of growth, healing, and the unbreakable bonds forged through shared experiences. And as for Mark and Elise, their names faded into the recesses of my mind, eclipsed by the overwhelming sense of gratitude and contentment that washed over me. For in the end, karma had indeed run its course, and I had emerged victorious, not through acts of vengeance or bitterness, but by embracing the power of forgiveness and letting go of the past that had once held me captive. As Owen's lips met mine in a tender kiss, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unbreakable bonds that had sustained me through the darkest of times. And in that moment, I was truly blissfully free.